Today, we're diving into the incredible story of an empire that literally traded its sword for a pen. An empire that built one of the greatest centers of knowledge in all of human history, only to watch it all go up in flames. This is the story of the rise and the fall of the House of Wisdom.
So you have to ask, right? How does a massive, conquering empire just stop? How do they decide to shift their entire focus from winning wars to winning arguments and discovering the secrets of the universe? Well, it's a huge change, and to really get it, we need to rewind to a major power shift back in the 8th century.
All right, let's set the scene. The year is 750 CE. The Islamic world is on the brink of a revolution. A brand new dynasty is about to take over, and they've got a completely different vision for what an empire should be.
And a difference between the old guard and the new? It's like night and day. First, you had the Umayyad dynasty. For them, it was all about conquest, pushing the borders of the empire all the way from Central Asia to Spain. Their world revolved around their capital in Damascus. But then, in 750, they get overthrown by the Abbasids. And the Abbasids, they bring in a totally new philosophy. They shift the focus from expanding to building, from conquering land to creating a multicultural empire of ideas.
And look, this wasn't some happy accident. This was a choice, a very deliberate, strategic decision. The Abbasids knew that a truly great empire couldn't be built just on force, so they turned their attention inward, focusing on things like culture, science, and administration. And their very first step? To build a spectacular new capital city right from the ground up.
That new capital was Baghdad. And it wasn't just another city. It was designed from the start to be the heart of this new world, the very center of the known universe.
And for a while, it absolutely was. Baghdad was intentionally built at the crossroads of major trade routes. So you had wealth, goods, and merchants pouring in from everywhere. But even more important than money was knowledge. The city was built to attract intellect.
And that's the key right there. The city's wealth, its stability, it all created the perfect petri dish for an intellectual explosion. The Abbasid caliphs weren't just kings, they were huge patrons of the arts and sciences, actively sending out invitations to the best and brightest minds to come to their new capital.
And all of this focus on brains over brawn, it kicks off what we now call the Islamic Golden Age. We're talking about a period of scientific and cultural achievement so incredible that it would literally change the course of history for the entire world.
The sheer amount of brain power packed into Baghdad was just staggering. And it wasn't just one field. You had poets, writers, doctors, philosophers, astronomers, you name it. We're talking about physicians whose medical books were used in Europe for centuries, philosophers who blended Greek and Islamic thought, and engineers who were mapping the stars and building incredible machines. It was this amazing melting pot of minds that made the whole thing work.
And right at the center of it all, the beating heart of this whole operation was the legendary House of Wisdom. You can think of it as a super library, a university, and a research institute all rolled into one massive, world-changing institution. It was the engine driving this entire golden age.
So, how'd they do it? Well, their method was systematic and absolutely brilliant. It all started with this massive translation movement. They gathered the great works from the Greeks, the Persians, the Indians, all of it, and painstakingly translated it all into Arabic. But here's the crucial part. They didn't just stop there. They didn't just preserve old knowledge. They used it as a launching pad. Scholars studied Greek and Indian math, and then bam, they invented a whole new system we now call algebra. This process happened over and over again in every field, creating the bedrock of so much of modern science. For centuries, Baghdad was it. It was the place to be for discovery.
But you know how these stories go. No golden age lasts forever. And out from the east, a new power was rising. A force of nature, really, that was about to bring this era of enlightenment to a sudden and brutal end.
Under Genghis Khan and his descendants, the Mongol Empire just exploded onto the scene. They were masters of cavalry, and their conquests were incredibly fast, efficient, and, well, devastatingly brutal. They forged the largest single-land empire in human history, and their reputation for being unstoppable and merciless traveled far ahead of their armies.
And wow, did they move fast. In just a few decades, they'd swept across all of Central Asia, wiping entire empires off the map. By the middle of the 13th century, they were right on the doorstep of the Abbasid Caliphate. And their number one target? Its capital, Baghdad. What happens next is one of the great tragedies in the history of human knowledge. It's the story of an unstoppable force meeting what was once thought to be an immovable object.
The Mongol general Hulagu Khan demanded that Baghdad surrender. The Caliph, maybe he was overconfident, maybe he just couldn't believe his city could fall, he refused. It turned out to be a fatal mistake. In 1258, the Mongols surrounded the city, and its legendary defenses just crumbled.
The Mongol army didn't just conquer the city, they annihilated it. They leveled it. Libraries were burned. Countless books, all that knowledge were dumped into the Tigris River, and the great House of Wisdom, the very heart of the Islamic Golden Age, was completely destroyed. Just like that, an era was over.
And, with that one act, 500 years of continuous Abbasid leadership, a historical epic that had defined the world came to a sudden, violent end. The fate of the last caliph in Baghdad was especially gruesome. The Mongols had a tradition that said you couldn't spill royal blood onto the earth, so they rolled him up in a carpet and had him trampled to death by horses. It was just a shocking, brutal end to a dynasty that had given the world one of its greatest centers of learning.
The destruction of Baghdad was, without a doubt, a catastrophe. But it does leave us with a really deep question. Can the fall of one city, even a city as important as Baghdad, really erase the knowledge of an entire civilization? The books were destroyed, yes, but the ideas inside them, well, they had already spread across the world.